Hi, I'm Ruth, a British veterinary nurse who uses my online platforms to give an insight into the veterinary industry. Over on my Instagram, I am often asked about my zoo nursing qualification, so today I'll be answering the most common questions on this. The course I completed is run by Girling & Fraser and is a City & Guilds accredited qualification, which is open to any registered veterinary nurse or country equivalent veterinary technician. You don't need to work in a zoo or even be currently working in practice in order to complete the course. However, it may be beneficial to have some experience of working with wild animals in order to give you a greater understanding when studying the theory. It costs a little bit more to do it today than when I did it. Now it costs £400 plus VAT. However, most good practices have a yearly CPD allowance of £500, and so this would easily cover the course costs. On a side note, if you're currently looking for a new job in veterinary practice, remember to have a look at the CPD allowance, as some practices do offer well below the average for what is a mandatory requirement to keep us on the register. It's an online distance learning course where you are given 2 years to complete the whole course. Within these 2 years, it's completely up to you when you do your work, as there are no deadlines set in this time frame. It is estimated that this course would take you 6 months to complete, and so you have a lot of extra time in order to give you flexibility within your studies. There is no exam within the course. Instead, there are end of module assessments, which are a mixture of short and long answer questions, mainly just checking that you have read and understand the course material. At the end of the course, the final assessment is in the form of an essay. This is a theoretical case study where you're given a case where you need to give a plan of how you would manage it alongside the vet and provide a detailed nursing care plan for this case. And it mainly just covers a lot of the topics that you will have studied in the course. There are 7 modules in total: anatomy and physiology, reproduction, breeding and husbandry, nutrition, restraint, handling, enclosure design and management of zoo animals, anaesthesia, the zoo industry, conservation and reintroduction, as well as preventative healthcare, common diseases and nursing care. The course material is extremely detailed and allows you to gain so much knowledge on all of these topics. There is a range of course materials available, from detailed PDF notes to recorded lectures, as well as a Facebook group, which is extremely useful to interact with other students. Aside from the immense knowledge that you will gain from this qualification, you will also complete 50 hours of CPD. That's your compulsory continuing professional development, which if you're a UK registered veterinary nurse, you need to complete 15 hours of CPD each year to remain on the register. So these 50 hours can be broken up into the 2 years, so 25 hours on each year. So you have completed those requirements for 2 years. You'll also receive a certificate of completion, as well as this super cute pin badge, and be able to use the letters APVN, that's Advanced Programme in Veterinary Nursing, brackets zoo, after your name. You may be interested in gaining a diploma in veterinary nursing of zoo and exotic animals, and there are 4 other programmes which are offered by Girling & Fraser which allow you to do this. These are veterinary nursing of avian species, amphibians and reptiles, small mammals and wildlife, which is mainly centred around British wildlife. If you were to complete these as well as the zoo programme, you would complete 250 hours of CPD, and you would be able to gain a diploma in the vet nursing of zoo and exotic wild animals. You can enrol anytime on the Girling & Fraser website, which I'll link down below, and I believe courses start on the 1st of each month. My personal experience of this course and some answers from my Instagram Q&A. I was working in a first opinion general practice when I decided I wanted to do this course. I was based across two branches where one was in a pet shop and one was not. The practice at the pet shop saw lots of exotics, mainly small mammals, so rabbits, guinea pigs, rats, gerbils, dagus, those sorts of animals, as well as some reptiles and some birds. And at both practices we were seeing wildlife cases, and I've always enjoyed working with these sorts of species, as when I was growing up, alongside always looking after cats, I also had a lot of small mammals which I cared for as pets. Now, in both of those practices there were some nurses who had done the feline certificate, and there were other nurses who were really interested and knowledgeable about dogs and wanted to complete further training on dogs and canine behaviour. And so I thought, as there was no nurse who was a sort of go-to nurse for the exotic species, it would be brilliant and beneficial to the practice if I were to complete firstly the small mammal course. So I approached my managers, and one of them was really keen for me to do this course, but the other one was not, and he said no immediately. The reason being that because I was just over a year qualified at that time, he wanted me to go to a conference or a congress instead, where I would be able to see lots of different specialities and see if there were things that I preferred more than exotic nursing, which I think is a great idea, especially as when we've done all of our training, and it's a lot of work to study as a veterinary nurse, just like many other professional careers, and you're working and studying at the same time, and you're used to doing all of that work, and you just want to continue and keep learning and keep gaining as much knowledge as you can, and so you're ready to dive into the next big thing. But sometimes maybe you need to take a step back and actually see what it is that you love the most. And for me, I really wanted to do the exotics course, but they said no. So I decided, well, if they're going to fund any of these programs, it will definitely not be the zoo certificate. So I want to fund this by myself. It was a little bit cheaper when I did it, so I was able to do that. And then once I've done that, I can show them how dedicated I am, and then I will eventually wear them down, and they'll pay for me to do the other courses. And that was my plan. Unfortunately, it was COVID when I was doing this by that point, and so actually the plan ended a bit differently, because then I became a night nurse. But that is part of the reason why the first program from this course that I did was the zoo program. I love the later modules, learning about conservation, rehabilitation and reintroduction, and I really enjoyed learning about the preventative medicine, as there were some similarities with domestic animals such as parasite treatment and population control. I found the anatomy and physiology module a little bit long, as there was a lot of information in there, which is a good thing, but for me it was just a little bit too dense, and there were so many Latin names and quite a lot of animals that I'd actually never heard of, and so I powered through, and then it only got better after there. But with saying that, I still really enjoyed that unit. It's just there was a lot of information in it. Yes, I would recommend using the course recommended textbook. I left this until the last minute to use it, because there is so much detailed information in the course material that it was only when I came to write the essay that I actually needed it. And it's super helpful because it goes into so much detail on many topics, and at the end of each chapter there's references, so you can use them to go and gain more information on a specific topic. It's a little bit pricey, so if your practice doesn't have it, which as many of you probably work in regular domestic animal first opinion practices, it's very unlikely that your practice will stock this book. If that's the case and you don't want to purchase it yourself, see if there is a university close to where you live. It doesn't necessarily need to do veterinary nursing or veterinary science as a degree. It could do biology or zoology, contact the librarian at that university and see if they stock this book. If they do, then you may not be able to actually take the book away from the library, but you will definitely be allowed to visit, and you can make notes and take photos if needed and save yourself some money. Another very important piece of advice is don't write your final essay on the plane. And this is what I did. So I wrote my final essay on the plane coming back from holiday because I decided what better time to write a really important essay than when I'm up in the air and have no Wi-Fi. So on that first submission, I didn't pass because I didn't go into enough detail. And basically what I'd done was use all my downloaded course material to write the essay. However, I needed to have proper peer-reviewed references backing up everything I had said. So when I got this back and I realised that I hadn't really put the proper amount of effort in, I was living in London at the time and I contacted the Zoological Society of London, so ZSL, and I went and used their library. The librarian booked me in for a day. I had to contact them in advance. I don't know if that was a COVID requirement or if it's a normal requirement, and she booked me a slot, showed me how to use their library system, how to use their archive, and I was able to access lots of different books and journals, which was super helpful. And there was a really big range of information for all different wild and zoo animals. If you live in London, definitely use that as a resource. Yes, I've always had an interest in wild animals. Now, with zoos, I'm not going to say I'm 100% in agreement with them, and I actually wrote an essay about this when I studied zoology, about the pros and cons of the zoo industry, but I will say that there are some benefits to zoos. And as a veterinary professional, I do appreciate zoos that have a designated veterinarian or vet clinic on site, as that says to me that they really do care about the health and safety of their animals. When I was growing up, I wanted to gain experience working as a zoo in order to understand a little bit more about the zoo industry. And as someone that wanted to become a veterinary professional, I thought it was my duty to understand more about the different establishments where we have animals, one of them being an abattoir, another being zoos. And so I was able to gain experience working at Balham Zoo, and I spent a summer working there where I was able to see behind the scenes and witness how they cared for the animals, and I really enjoyed learning about the different enrichment programs that they put in place to make the environment better. Not obviously recreating 100% a wild environment, but having that captive environment better for the animal and allowing them to use more of the behaviours that they would be using in a more natural place. And I really enjoyed this work experience, and it gave me a greater insight into the zoo industry, as when I was growing up I had quite a negative experience with zoos, as the two zoos that I visited as a child were inner city zoos and they're very small. They only have a certain amount of space, so they can't expand. So for me as a child, it's a little bit distressing going to these zoos and seeing such large animals in such a small space. My final reason for completing the zoo course was because when I was a student nurse, my practice was running a conservation project competition where 2 lucky winners would be able to use money to go to a conservation project of their choice, as well as have extra leave to do it. And I was one of the lucky winners that was able to do that. And I chose to go to Elephant Nature Park in northern Thailand in Chiang Mai, where I was able to work alongside elephants. Because I wasn't a fully qualified vet nurse at the time, there was a limit to the amount of things that I could do, but I was still able to get involved with cleaning of wounds, dressing changes, physiotherapy and hydrotherapy, as well as follow the experienced vet teams around the park and see how they treated elephants. After this experience, I knew that I wanted to go back to Thailand but with more experience, as well as other places across the world, and work with different animals like this, using my knowledge to be able to help them. And so I knew that by having this course, it would give me that greater knowledge of all different wild animals, where I would be able to travel and use this knowledge to help animals. If you've watched all the way to the end of this video, thank you, I really do appreciate it. And if you have any questions on the Girling and Fraser courses, whether it's the zoo course or any of the other ones that they offer, please drop me a message in the comments or send me a message on Instagram. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.